All right, we welcome everyone to today's webinar. Thank you everyone for joining us today. The SCEP Foundation webinars through BYU Management Society. We'll be happy to meet with our guest today, Dale Crawford, who is going to tell us more about himself and particularly his experience. And I would love to read more of our biographic content about Dale before we start, to know more about him. Dale L. Crawford is the executive director of the Steel Tube Institute. Dale is responsible for the organizations and activity to promote the growth and the competitiveness of the steel pipe and tubular product throughout the North American, reporting to the board directors. In addition to those responsibilities, he's also responsible for activity strategics and program of the Steel Tube Institute conduct sections, which consist of North America's leading steel conduct manufacturers. Before joining STI, Dale worked at electrical contractor, Mountain Wind and Solar as their director of marketing and business development. He is also responsible for all aspects of marketing and business development strategy. Prior to this position, Dale worked as for 9 years for the electrical wire manufacturer, Corel Wire, both in the Utah office and the corporate headquarters in Astley. So he also began working for Corel Wire as a productive supervisor and subsequently worked as the electrical distribution division marketing manager, and finally as the director of marketing and value development. So Dale was responsible for all marketing, PR, advertising, business development, and product development effort for the company. So I would love to turn over the time to Dale to also talk more about himself, his career, and better opportunities that he find experience in sharing with us to be able to learn from him throughout his career. Thank you, and we welcome you on board.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to all of you today and all of you who may watch this at a later time. I've spent some time as a part-time job, I guess you could say, as an online adjunct professor for BYU Idaho. And so that BYU Pathways feeds into. Many of you watching this probably took marketing management if you had any major related to business. That's the course I teach, and the current iteration is the course I wrote. So if you remember times of taking that class, I hope you remember it fondly. Some of you may have even had me as your instructor. So thanks for your time today. I thought a while about what I could share. I feel I've had an odd career that's taken me different places and done a lot of different things that doesn't really make a lot of sense how my career progressed. But I've loved every minute of it, and I think there's some lessons that could be learned from things that have happened to me. So that's what I decided to focus on, focusing on going the extra mile and just having flexibility in what you do and how that can help shape your future. So that's what I'd like to talk about today. I'd like to keep in mind as we go through this this presentation today that everything that I'm sharing is not something that I feel that I've done alone in any way. I've had family, my wife behind me, but most of all, I've had my Savior Jesus Christ that has helped me and guided me as I've gone through trials and gone through a lot of highs and lows. And the one thing I want, if you take away nothing from this webinar today, I want you to remember what Elder Maxwell said. He said, "The Lord loves each of us too much to merely let us go on being what we now are, for he knows what we have the possibility to become." So that's what I like to talk about today, what we can become and allowing ourselves that possibility, not worrying about every little thing and having a plan. You'll see that I had a plan in my career and nothing went to plan, and it still worked out well because I had faith in Christ that it would. And maybe I didn't have as much as I do now. It's easier to look back, but I hope you can learn from me to have faith from the beginning. Wanted to start with a story that a lot of you may be familiar with. I tried to pick a story that might be of more interest to you than some of the sports and teams that I'm interested in. In 2006, the FIFA World Cup was taking place in Germany, and the Ghanaian national soccer team, it was also known as the Black Stars, was making its World Cup debut, and one of their key players, Michael Essien, was injured during a critical match against the Czech Republic. That was the tournament's second highest ranked team at the time. So this left the team in a very precarious position. With their star player out, the team's coach, Radomir Djokovic, had to quickly rethink his strategy. I may butcher some names in this story. I hope not. But uh, because the Essien was out, they had to rethink everything. The team morale was very low. The pressure was really high to perform well. A lot of other African nations were looking at the Ghanaian national team, and there just was a lot of pressure on them. And this match was crucial for their chances to progress into the round of 16 out of the group stage. Their coach made a bold decision to totally change the formation and put in more younger and relatively inexperienced players. He focused on a more aggressive style of play. He encouraged the team to press hard, to attack from the start, and the players had to adapt quickly to the new game plan and rely on their training and their instincts. When the game began, Ghana surprised everyone with their energy and their determination. They played with an incredible intensity and took the Czech team by surprise. The team adapted to their new roles seamlessly, with players stepping in to fill the gaps left by Essien. Ghana's quick ability and relentless attack paid off, and they scored early in the match. Ghana ended up winning the game 2-0, marking one of the biggest upsets in World Cup history. The victory not only boosted the team's confidence, but also inspired many back home and across Africa. Ghana eventually advanced to the round of 16, an impressive feat for a debuting team. The story of the Ghanaian national team highlights the importance of having flexibility and readiness in the face of whatever we may whatever we may face as challenges. The ability to quickly adapt strategies and those roles led to that historic victory, and it can do the same for us. I'd like to talk about having a resiliency to ourselves and an ability to adapt, and to take this 2006 Ghana World Cup team as a powerful example as we try to stay flexible, stay nimble, and roll with the punches that are going to surely come our way in life and in our careers. So I'll start out and tell you a little bit of my story. I was born in Brigham City, Utah, right near the mountains. It's a smaller town, about 30,000 people. And I then served a mission to the Georgia Macon Mission. Those are my mission leaders, President and Sister Garner. They are my favorite people in the world. I learned so much from them about how to be a person of high character and empathy. I came home and I married my high school sweetheart, Amy Coburn. Now, Amy Coburn Crawford. We are celebrating 20 years this year. My family, we had two kids. So this was a long time ago. They're much bigger now. They're actually even bigger than this. This was 2 years ago. So my daughter Callie is 17. My son is 15. Um, one of our dogs has passed away, so we actually only have the one on the right there. But I uh, my family has always been my largest inspiration for trying to be successful. Uh, my career's never been about money, but it's been about being able to provide for my family. There's not a better motivator than taking care of people you love and you know don't delay that if that's not something that has been happened for you yet, is my advice. So career and college wise, I went to Weber State University, which is in Ogden, Utah, for my undergraduate degree, and I graduated in 2006 with a bachelor's degree in healthcare administration. This is my wife and I at my college graduation. We were so young, so many things I would tell young Dale then if I could. My wife was very pregnant at the time. She was pregnant with our second child when I graduated with my master's, and now we're 40, and I'm pursuing a doctorate degree right now. I just started, so I'll finish in 3 to 4 years. And I've teased my wife that she'll probably be pregnant for my next graduation, and that's not a joke she finds funny at all. So I probably will have to stop making that joke. So I got out of school, and I hadn't started my master's. I wanted to go right into that. I wanted to work in healthcare. That was my first thought because that's what I graduated in. But I really wanted to work in marketing, and part of me really wanted to work for a really exciting company. So I'm gonna ask you to turn on your mics if you want to tell me. Does anyone recognize this symbol? What company is that?
Nike.
Nick.
Nike.
Nike. Okay, I figured you guys would know that one. One of the most recognizable brands in the world. Nike is known as probably one of the best companies at brand management in the world as well. And I decided if I couldn't get a job in healthcare, which was difficult at the time, I wanted to work for Nike. I applied for several positions and I got one that was up in Oregon. I was going to have to move my family. It was very low paying. I discovered quite quickly, especially in the field of marketing, that the cooler the company you work for, the less it pays and the more competitive it is. And so this was a brand manager training program, and I could not figure out how to really make ends meet, and allow my wife um, to stay home and take care of our baby that was soon coming. So I applied for some other jobs and decided maybe I don't have to do something so exciting. So, does anyone recognize this company or this brand? I'm going to venture that the answer is no. So, this is the company I took a job with. They make wiring, so electrical wiring that would go in your house or in any building that you'd be in. Um, One thing I want to point out here as I'm telling my story is I had no idea that this industry really exists. I never thought about, how the power got from one place to another. I really never thought about, yeah, there's probably a company that makes that. I definitely didn't realize how much went into the distribution process there, and everything related to that. And one thing that I learned in this process is most of us end up spending our careers working for companies that no one has ever heard of, that aren't that exciting. And there's nothing wrong with that. Don't don't just go after the big companies and worry about the recognition of the company you're working for, the career you take. I've had a very happy career working for companies that none of you have ever heard of, and probably in parts of the market that you wouldn't realize. And I took this job because I was excited. They had never had a layoff in 80 years of the company's history. It's like never had a layoff. So I'm not sure if all of you use that term. That's a reduction force that, where a company has hard times and they have to, let go of a large percentage of their employees at a time. They had never had that. So I was like, this is going to be great. So I took the job at Sarawire, and it was a production supervisor job. I had had some experience as a production foreman, working for a small nutritional supplement manufacturer. And as a production foreman, that meant we had 3 production employees, including me, and I was in charge of the other 2. So it really it wasn't that big of a management job, but it did get me this job as a production supervisor. It wasn't quite what I wanted. And so I made a decision early on that I was going to do what I could to get into the area that I wanted to work in. And I wanted to work in marketing. So I took on this mantra of thinking beyond my pay grade. So sometimes in a work environment, you'll hear somebody say, "Well, that's above my pay grade," meaning that's someone else's decision to make. I'm too low to in the company to think about that or work on it. And I just decided I'm going to work on whatever I have ideas on and whatever I think would help the company. And so I decided I'm going to think beyond my pay grade. So I did a number of things. I did some that were more related to what I did, as a production supervisor. I suggested a way to realign one of our production lines so that the operator could spend less time walking and more time, being able to do quality checks and efficiency checks. And we made that move, and it cost quite a bit of money to move that equipment, and it paid for itself within a few months. And I was very proud of that change. I went to the HR manager because I was studying in my MBA. I went ahead and started my at night school pursuing my my master's degree. When I was taking an organizational behavior class, and I loved that class, learning about how organizations work and how people work. And so I asked her if I could take a shot at redoing our evaluation process, how we evaluated production employees to determine raises and bonuses and other things. And I did that. I took a lot of time on it. My professors helped me, and we ended up implementing that company wide. There was 4 plants, and I was just at one of these plants or manufacturing facilities. And we ended up doing that. We then hit a little bit of a roadblock, and that is a recession. So I don't know if any of you are old enough to know about the 2008 recession all that much, but um, it was a hard time to work in an industry related and reliant on the housing industry, especially in the United States. A lot of houses got foreclosed, they got built and never occupied, or people ended up losing their homes. The mortgage lenders gave mortgages to people that were beyond their ability to pay for. They had there's a lot of things that play there, but essentially the housing market bubble burst, and a large portion of the economy in the United States was reliant on that. And so overnight, people started losing their jobs. The wiring that was in the department I made was all for residential housing. It was the whole reason I was hired was because of all the houses um, that were being built. And so within about 2 or 3 months of this happening, this drastic line that came down here, um, they had a layoff. I showed up one morning. I actually found out the night before that they were having a layoff, and there was 8 supervisors, production supervisors. Usually in a layoff, it's the last person hired is the first one out. That's who's going to get laid off. It's by seniority. So I pretty much had decided I was going to lose my job in the morning. We ourselves had a mortgage that was tight for us to pay for. We could pay for it. We had decided to take an aggressive loan, a 15-year loan, when maybe we shouldn't have, on our house. And so I was really nervous and had, one young kid and was also trying to pay for graduate school. The next morning I showed up and I didn't lose my job. Unfortunately, some of my friends that were supervisors did. There were 3 of them that lost their job, and they cut down from 8 to 4. And they said they hid me in the office, is what the plant manager said. Yeah, a couple people who unfortunately had lost their job, they had to compile some responsibilities, and I became manager of special projects, I think was my title. And basically I just did a hodgepodge of a bunch of things because I had illustrated that I could do, and I would, a bunch of different things. And so I got put over new product development projects. I got put over some engineering tasks. I got put over, um, some HR initiatives. Because I had done all of those things and thought beyond my pay grade, it saved my job at that time. And I, had an ability to continue to pay my mortgage and keep food on the table for my family. So, as I said, at this time I was going through graduate school. I was pursuing a master's of business administration at Utah State University. And I decided to keep doing what I could to think beyond my pay grade. And I looked for every opportunity in my master's schooling to apply what I was learning to the organization. This thinking beyond your pay grade and taking ideas to people, you're going to have some people that feel you're stepping on their toes. And and that's okay. It's okay if somebody says, no, I don't want your help, or don't worry about that. That's not your job. No harm, no foul. I wouldn't worry about that. So I kept doing that, and I went to my boss, and then he took it to the company president and the VP of sales, an offer of, I'm taking a marketing research class. Is there something that I could research for the company? Well, at the time, we had, as a company, had just made a drastic change to how we went to market within the United States and Canada. That's the market that we covered. We traditionally had gone through what's called manufacturing representatives. So in the electrical distribution market, you would have a manufacturer's representative agency. So that would be a company that would have a geographical footprint, maybe a state or two within the United States. And they would sell everything that an electrical distributor would need to then sell to an electrical contractor to install. So they would have a line of wiring, which is what we made. They'd have a line, and by a line I mean a manufacturer, one brand of, say, electrical conduit, which is what I represent now. Um, and the line of lighting, all those things. Well, my company had decided to fire all of these manufacturers representative agencies. They just said, we're going to do it direct because they get a percentage of it. We're going to try to make more money, and we're going to fire all of them. And it caused considerable anger and angst in our industry, to a significant degree. And so what they asked me to do was to field a research study and go out and do a survey. So I did that. This was a resulting paper that I just put up here, where I titled it "Assessing the Value of Wire's Value Proposition," and asked electrical distributors across the country, and I ended up with several hundred interviews and surveys completed. And there was a lot of anger about that decision we'd made. I got sworn at a lot. I learned some new swear words, which was surprising because I heard a lot on my mission. And so uh, I the resulting findings were that we had made the wrong decision. You know, we should not have gone direct, and we should not have fired these manufacturers up. We learned that the electrical distributors were so close to them. These were their best friends. They went on vacation together. Their wives hung out together, and it was just an all around bad move. So they flew me out to Alabama, which is where our headquarters was, to present all of this to the sales team and all of the corporate managers and the executive team. So it was about 30 to 40 people, probably the most intimidating thing I'd ever done to that point in my life. And these were all the people who had made this decision that I was now telling them it was wrong, and they didn't know me from Adam. They had no idea who I was and why I was telling them that their idea was bad. Um, and in the end, you know, I answered some tough questions and just relied on the data. And the next morning, while I was there in Alabama, the president of the company offered me a job. He offered me the job to be a marketing manager for the company, which is a position we had never had. And I said, well, but I can't move to Alabama. I'm in uh, a master's program. And my wife is going to school to finish her degree in elementary education. I've got another baby on the way. And he said, well, we'll talk about you moving to Alabama when um, you know, you graduate. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. I'll find another job before I have to move to Alabama. And not that I don't like Alabama. I served my mission in the state next to it in Georgia. So I love the South, but I didn't want to move to Alabama, and I wanted to stay near family. So our next crisis came when I could not find a job instead of moving to Alabama. I applied everywhere. I now had a master's degree. I had a couple of years of experience. The market was at least a little better coming out of the recession, but it still was tough. And the jobs that I could take, I would have to take a couple steps back in my career and take, a pretty big pay cut. And uh, my wife and I had no other choice but to take it to the Lord. And that's a bad way to think about it. That was the last thing we did after we did everything else we could was to pray about it. So don't do what I did there. Because once we prayed about it, we felt instantly, still on our knees, this peace that we needed to move and that it would be okay. And my wife was very reliant on her mom to help with the kids. I was very reliant on my dad to do manly things. I didn't know how to do a lot of things in the house, and my dad would come over. He lived like a half mile away from my house, and he would come fix everything. And I was like, we're gonna have to do it. We're gonna have to move. But as soon as we turned that over to the Lord and said we would move, everything started falling into place. It was the smoothest move that it could be. We did own a house, and it was not a good time to sell a house. We put that up for sale and decided we were going to, find a house in Alabama. We found a builder that was willing to build our dream home exactly the way we wanted it, and done what's called contingency of us selling our house, and that's unheard of to build a house, you know, particularly for somebody exactly the way they want with our little quirks in it, and not knowing if you actually are they're going to buy it. But they did that. The move went well. We sold our house. We were able to move right into the house right as it was done. It just couldn't have been more smooth. There's some pictures from Alabama. We moved to a small town and they have a little festival called the Chicken and Egg Festival, and that just still cracks me up because it's just the weirdest small town tradition you could think of. That's our house. That was a big deal for us to build a house exactly the way we wanted. Neither of us had never lived in a new house at all. We both grew up in families that really struggled financially, and so living in a comfortable house, with the room we needed and the way we wanted it was a huge blessing for us. It was extremely exciting, and so we were grateful that that is something that ended up being possible. And it's like picture of me and my daughter at the Air and Space Center. The American Space Program has a space center there in Alabama near where we live. So the next thing I learned, and the next thing I want to convey to you, to all of you, to remember, is related to this saying. This is what I learned while I was down there, because things still weren't going great for the market, and we were still struggling as a company financially. And so I was worried that I would still have a chance of losing my job. So on most job descriptions, you'll see a bullet point where they'll list all of the duties that you have, all the things you're supposed to do for your job. And they'll have a last bullet point often that'll say other duties as assigned. And it's kind of a catch-all that we have to do all these things. And then if we think of anything else, you have to do that too. This line in job descriptions actually upsets a lot of people. They think it's unfair and shouldn't be in job descriptions. And you should tell somebody exactly everything they're going to have to do. I get the point from an employee perspective, but as a manager, it honestly can't foresee everything that may occur. And then again, from my experience of what happened to me, this was the greatest blessing to me is that I looked at that on my job description when I moved down there. And I was like, if I always do other duties as assigned, it's like I can make myself invaluable to the company. So that was my goal. I had done that as a production supervisor and done things outside of that. And that's my job. I'm me with I helped with financial and accounting problems. I helped with a lot of presentations. I discovered I was one of the few people that had much experience in data analysis. That I learned, decent bit about it, so I was grateful for that. But even things that are pretty simple, like softwares, and I'm not talking about really fancy software. I'm talking about Microsoft Excel and Microsoft PowerPoint. There, there was a whole group of people there that really didn't know how to use those programs very well, and I self-taught myself how to use them. I've lost all of it pretty much because I haven't used it as much. So you're probably looking at this point saying you're not so good at PowerPoint, and that's definitely true now. But at one point, I was really good at it. But I would advise all of you strongly to throw away the mindset of that's not my job. Um, you might get taken advantage of, and that's okay. You know, somebody might push some things onto you, but that's okay. And I had that happen to me. But what ended up happening also is we had two more layoffs while I was there in Alabama, and they affected the corporate office quite a bit. We By the time I left, the corporate staff had been reduced by almost half, and I made it through both of those layoffs. Both of them with the amount of the company I should have been laid off, but I didn't because there were people that needed me to do certain things because I did all other duties as assigned. We had other trials while we were there. This top left map shows you all of the recorded tornadoes that have happened in the United States. So Alabama is about, I'm gonna, hopefully this works, about here. Can you see that on the, I don't know if you can see that. But Alabama is right where all of the tornadoes are, basically. And where I came from, there's no tornadoes. So that was a huge change. Um, so we had several tornadoes that happened there, but we had one that was significant. It was a lived. This was a weather camera that captured tornado, and this was the picture I took driving home that day, of the sky being very angry. We ended up being there for what's called Tornado Tuesday, as we call it locally there, but it's a uh, they call it a super outbreak. It ended up being the second deadliest day of tornadoes in U.S. history. In spring of 2011. And for any of you that maybe from the United States watching this, the reason you probably don't remember this or heard about it is the next day is when the United States SEAL Team 6 killed Osama bin Laden. And that dominated the headlines. So that's maybe why you may not have heard of this. But if you can see this laser pointer, I'm not sure if you can, but we lived right in between these two, and the purple is an EF5. EF5 means it's the strongest tornado. And we came through that with a lot of gratitude that our lives were saved. The people in our ward, their lives were saved, but some people didn't survive. A lot of people didn't survive, and a lot of property was damaged. This was part of the cleanup. You can see down here these yellow shirts. If you've been in a disaster, you may recognize them. This is the church's efforts of cleaning up. Um, this house here was across the street from the property we were cleaning up here. That was a Stake Young Men's president. His neighbors over here, their house basically just pancaked and collapsed, and a family of four was killed inside that home. So we left that with a lot of gratitude for granted. Tornadoes pop up out of nowhere. I mean, you just don't have a lot of warning, and a day can turn south on you really bad from even a nice, bright, shiny day. So we learned to be grateful for what we have and to take care of others when things like this occur. So back to a happier, you know, time. I got a promotion. I was made a director, and after doing that for about a year, the company gave me an option to live wherever I wanted to. They said I could work remotely, and I chose to move back to Utah to be near family. And I did that job for another year or two, and then I decided to go to another opportunity. So
this opportunity was with a company that installed solar panels on commercial and residential buildings, and there was a lot of fun, and I learned a lot from that. But just so yeah, I'm very clear, my career hasn't been, all ups. This was a little bit of a down. This job ended up not being what I was told it would be. Um, I was promised some things and some partial ownership in some of the things I was brought on to develop that ended up not being the case. And I trusted a little too much. And so I was there, and I didn't want to be someone who job hopped a lot. So I decided to make the best of the opportunity. And so I took on the mantra of I'm just going to keep showing up. I'm going to look for ways to make myself useful and to learn things. This job sold to commercial and to residential. One of the advantages to that is I had never sold directly to consumers. In marketing, there's business to business marketing and there's business to consumer marketing. Well, this was business to consumer marketing. So I developed some skills there that I didn't have before, and it rounded out my resume for marketing. One of the things that allowed me to do is then teach marketing at BYU Idaho. I had applied before and they hadn't accepted me because I didn't have a really well round. I had only done one type of marketing, business to business. So I was able to get that job because of that. I developed a few other skills, and also I was able to work for an electrical contractor, which I hadn't done in my industry. I hadn't worked for that level of the values channel. So from this, I want to tell a short story and something I learned from a man named Larry H. Miller. This is what I was thinking of during that job when things weren't working out the way I'd hoped they would. Larry H. Miller has a rags to riches story. He grew up with not a lot, just like I did, and he started working for his dad's automotive business in Utah. And over time, he ventured into car sales, and eventually, he had saved up enough money to where he could buy a dealership. He bought a single Toyota dealership in 1979. Over the years, he grew that to be over 60 car dealerships. He started an entertainment business. He bought the New Orleans Jazz and moved them to Utah, named them the Utah Jazz. So he was the owner of that professional basketball team until he passed away, and then his wife has continued to own it, or at least a part of it at this point. So Larry H. Miller became a philanthropist after this, and he was a great humanitarian, gave away a lot of his money, and spent a lot of time imparting his wisdom that he had learned throughout his career. One of the things I remember is I saw him speak, and he spoke at my brother's graduation when he got a master's, and he talked about how to beat out the competition. So this is what I've thought of throughout my whole career. He said, the first thing you got to do is show up. If you show up, you will beat out 50% of your competition. And then he said the next step is you show up on time. Pretty simple. Show up on time. And have the respect for the people you work for, the people that you're serving. Show up on time, and if you do that, you'll beat out 75% of your competition. And lastly, he said, show up on time with a good attitude. And if you do that, you'll have 90%, you'll beat out 90% of the competition. That's what I thought of when I was struggling at that job and it wasn't going to plan. And I absolutely believe in what Larry H. Miller said there. Show up on time with a good attitude, and you'll beat out a lot of your competition, a whole lot of it. So moving on, I had a unique instance that happened to me at that point. I got called by a recruiter, and recruiters are great because they find you instead of you finding a job. They have a job they're trying to fill, and this recruiter called me and he said, Dale, you're my unicorn. And I've been called a lot of things in my life, but I had never been called a unicorn, and I didn't know if I liked that. I try to be a manly guy. Being called a unicorn didn't sound very manly. So I was like, what do you mean by a unicorn? And he said, I've been tasked with finding somebody for a job. And the people hired for this job, I think, are crazy because they wanted somebody who had had 6 different careers, and no reasonable person would have all of that experience. He said they wanted somebody with operational experience on the plant floor. They wanted somebody with business to business marketing experience and business to consumer marketing experience. They wanted somebody who had experience in the electrical distribution market and experience working for an electrical contractor. They wanted somebody with new product development experience and business development experience. And he's like, he found me on LinkedIn and he said, "You've got all of that. You got the weirdest background I've ever seen." And I was like, "Whoa, okay, well, tell me about the job." So the job is the organization I work for now. It sounds weird, and it sounded weird to me. The Steel Tube Institute. What does that mean? So, and it is a trade association. A trade association represents not a company, but a bunch of companies that compete against each other in the same market. It basically represents a product. And so anything that would just grow the market for that product would often be done by a trade association. And the trade association is hired together by a group of competitors. So the Steel Tube Institute has a lot of different products that are in there, but the main two are electrical conduit, that's here on the left, and structural tubing, which is called HSS, hollow structural sections. So I was hired to be the director of conduit, which means I was hired to promote this product, which is in the electrical world. And it ended up being the perfect job for me. I had given so much to my jobs, and I felt I'd given a lot of flexibility of myself. And I had a job that was finally giving me back flexibility. I was able to work from home completely. And I didn't have a boss looking over me. I had a committee looking over me, but I had the autonomy to run my business unit the way I wanted. I could hire and fire contractors or employees as I wanted. That sounds like I fired a lot of people. I didn't fire a lot of people. I mostly hired them. But it was awesome. It's also where I learned to be a more consistent and a more empathetic leader, having Christ-like empathy and seeing people as Christ would see them. I tried to be the manager that I had wished I had had in a lot of instances. I've had a lot of great managers over the years, but um, having empathy for someone and trying to do everything you can to put yourself in their circumstances and being their advocate um, is a completely different way of managing. And only through my knowledge and my testimony of Christ and the way that he loves all of his children was I able to work towards that. And I'm still not perfect at it, still working at it. But that led to me being seen by the board of directors as a strong manager. The time came for my manager, who was the executive director, to retire. And he was a great guy. He actually happened just very randomly, also as a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, like I am. And he was a stake president, and he was retiring and being released from that calling and moving near grandkids. The board decided to interview me, and then they were going to hire a recruiter to bring some other people in to compete with me. In the end, they never brought anyone else in. They all were satisfied and wanted me to have the job. And so I was given that job. I guess it's coming up on 3 years now, is in the fall of 2001. And that's been really meaningful to my family, financially, and again, even additional flexibility. And what I've really wanted my whole career is ability to run a company. And I have that now. But it's also given me flexibility to serve in my community and in my church. And last few years I've been able to serve in a bishopric in my ward, and that's been uh, a great opportunity that would have been really difficult to do with previous jobs I had. So one last thing I want to impart to all of you: if you don't know where you're going professionally, it doesn't matter if you know where you're going spiritually. I really believe that. I really believe if you are moving towards the Savior, it doesn't matter where your career goes. make plans, absolutely make plans, but realize your plans are not going to happen to plan. And that's okay. You'll adjust them and you'll make new plans. But if you have the plan to be a person of high character, a person of empathy, you will go really far. I promise you that. I know that. Strive to be Christ-like. I'm going to give you 5 takeaways here. First of them is strive to be Christ-like. Then, as I've talked about, be flexible and ready for some ups and downs. I didn't detail very many of my downs. I detailed a lot of the ups. I had a lot of downs. But they're hard to remember, honestly, because of the ups and because I kept focused. My family kept focused, and my beautiful wife kept me focused on the Savior. Third, again, think beyond your pay grade. I've talked a lot about that, and just reiterate it here. Do what you can to throw away that mindset of that's not my job. So that's my fourth one. Remember to do all the other things as assigned, even if it's not your boss. Most of the things I did that kept me from losing my job were not for my boss, but for other people in the organization, for the president of the company, for the VP of sales, for the CFO. That will keep you employed, but it'll keep you moving forward. And you're not going to ever regret helping someone out. And then finally, what Larry H. Miller taught us: show up on time, and show up with a good attitude. That's the end of my slides. There's some contact info there. I can put my LinkedIn in the chat. It's probably also tagged on the LinkedIn post about this. But do we have some questions? I think there's some in the chat. Or I'll turn it over to the moderator if they want to help field some questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dave, for your wonderful insight and for sharing your career experience with us. We'll turn over the time to our audience who want to ask a question. The floor is open.
Hello. Please, can his email and LinkedIn be put in the chat rather?
Put the email in the chat. Is that the
Yes,
request?
and LinkedIn. Yes, please.
Yes. Okay. I'm going to end the slideshow so I can do that. That's okay. And while I'm doing that, go ahead if anyone else has a question. This is my personal email. So yeah, feel free to ask me any questions, and please do connect with me on LinkedIn.
I think I'll go to Akaba. You can come up with your question. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. From the beginning, you were explaining that you studied healthcare administration at school. And I was thinking maybe you'll be working at the hospital or something like that. But it seems you're doing really well at your current job now. So I was thinking what you could help us learn from this experience, studying something from school and then doing something that is way different from what you studied at school, because it happens so many times to us.
Yeah, that's a good question, and I didn't explain that fully. So what happened was, I started as a business major, and then I decided, hey, I wanted to be a pharmacist. So I started taking classes for pre-pharmacy. I took about a year of those classes and job shadowed a pharmacist. That's a great way to, if you ever have that opportunity, to job shadow, basically just spend the day with someone who has a job that you want. I learned I didn't want to be a pharmacist. That's what I learned from doing that. And I did it a couple times. And I kept trying to figure out how I could move on from being a pharmacist and be a pharmacy manager. And I really just thought I probably ought to get a business degree. By then I had taken so many classes that in healthcare that I could graduate on time, graduating with the degree in healthcare administration. So I planned on working in that, but because my experience had been in production management, that was where I could find the best job and the best insurance, and for my wife to have our baby. And I kind of planned on trying to get back into healthcare, but again, plans changed and plans changed quickly, and I never got back to healthcare. So I've used that healthcare administration degree just basically like a general management degree, and that's advice. I know students a lot over what exactly they're going to major in and what exactly they're going to minor in. My advice is always don't, whatever you do, don't change your major and add more years to your degree. You know, if you're to where you want to work, um, get the degree and lock in that knowledge, lock in those credits that shows more than just what the subject was on your degree. It shows that you were able to do something hard. You were able to learn some knowledge, and that's what the degree does for you. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. I have a lot of people that have worked for me that have had degrees that are not closely related to what they work in, and that's okay. You see that a lot, honestly.
I just have a comment, I guess. First off, I just want to thank you, Dale. That was such a wonderful presentation. I really resonated with your story. I feel like my own career path has been just kind of all over the place. But I am grateful to look back and kind of trace. I feel like there's divine footprints along the way. And I'm grateful for that. It reminded me, you started out your presentation with a quote by Elder Maxwell, and I read his biography. Phenomenal read for anyone who would like a good biography suggestion. But he talks about how his career was similar and how he found himself bopping around at rapid speed in these different fields. And at the time, he couldn't see where it was leading. But then, of course, as he looked back, he could see that the Lord was very carefully guiding him along. And I love that example, and it's wonderful to hear your story now that you're a little further in your career path and you can look back and see how it prepared you to be where you're at now. But I think it gives me and probably some other people here in this who feel like they're maybe being tossed about and doing all sorts of different things, comfort that truly the Lord is guiding our paths. And I felt just along the way that he cares less about the work and the occupation that we choose than he does about our care for his children and our devotion to him. So, but just a quick question for you. How have you found, when you're in those low moments that you referenced, how have you found the continued strength and positivity to press forward?
You have to lean on the last high moments sometimes, but there's points in your career when you haven't yet had that up, and that's when your faith will be tested the most. And I I talked to you today in the middle of an up. I'm in the middle of an up, so I'm very positive today. It wasn't very long ago I was in the middle of a down, and I was looking at losing some member companies. For what I do, if we get a new CEO in of a company, we have 20 companies. We used to have 120. We don't. They all bought each other, and now there's 20. And out of the 20, one of our companies owns like five. And a new CEO came in, and they pay a substantial amount of money to our organization a year, and he was going to leave. And if he left, I knew another company that owned three companies was going to leave. And it was a crisis. And I won't go into the detail. We were able to bring him back in, and it was. Sometimes you have to just look at another person's example. to believe that you're going to have that up again.
Thank you.
Thanks for your question.
Thank you. I think Precious, your hand is up. You can ask your question.
Oh, thank you so much. I just want to ask, I joined the meeting lately because I missed a bit of the time. I was thinking the meeting is to start by 5. I don't know it's going to start by 4. So I'm just trying to ask if the record of from the beginning to learn what has been said, even um, the instructor himself.
Yes,
didn't
thank you.
catch
We'll
that
record the
question.
meeting. Yep. We record the webinar, so you can also have it and look at it and review it later.
Was there a second question? I couldn't hear. He cut out for me.
Okay, it was still the same question, just all together. Well, I also have another question to ask based on what has been said. I just want to ask, uh, how would you actually advise someone who is struggling to find out which career he should pursue? Because currently now I am doing this accounting in BYU Factory, and I have looked for health related stuff. I didn't, I feel like studying accounting will be better for me. So how do you advise someone who is very uncertain of what is to study, just like me?
Okay. I think I got your question. You did cut out a little bit there. You were asking, what advice would you give to someone who, you can't find that first opportunity, right? And I've seen that a lot, and I experienced that. I obviously skirted over a 20-year timeline really quickly. So the best advice I have is to continue to have faith, but look at any opportunity. If there's some skills that SCEP provides, maybe there's another skill set and another route you could take and learn a skill in that you hadn't considered before, and maybe isn't your ideal route and your ideal job. So that's what I tell students a lot is, don't worry about the first job being exactly what you want. Just get something, think behind your pay grade, and let it known what you're interested in. Be like, hey, if there's any projects in this area, can I work on that, or I can even do it on my own time, and do whatever you can to get that first opportunity. And it's not easy. It just isn't. But consider all options, I guess, is what I'd say.
Thank you. I think Edwin, your hand is up as well. After Edwin, we'll go to Goswill, then we'll close out today's webinar.
All right, thank you very much. I noticed that Brother Crawford had job chats, and that helped him sieve out what he would like to do or not. So I also noticed that he chose a management role or management path different than a skilled path. For example, he chose not to do pharmacy, which is very skilled, and he went through the management path. And I want to know, didn't that feel dangerous for him? Because the skill part means you're a specialist, and you can give this. The management route, what are they that you really give? I'm really interested to know what this management people do as skills. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great observation and great question. The skill path provides some assurity, and so I would absolutely recommend having some skill behind you. What I discovered is a lot of people who graduate wanting to go the management route, or in the field that I came from in marketing, they consider themselves an ideas person, and they want to just sit there and have ideas. Well, you don't get to be the ideas person until 10 years into your career, or 15 years or 20. You don't get to be the person that just manages people for a while. You have to have some skill within management or marketing. So if you go that route, and I definitely say, if you've got a skills path that interests you, go that route. That's great. That doesn't mean you're closing off to management, because try to have some kind of skill. And what I found was I became invaluable because of a skill, not because of my management skills. I became invaluable to the company because I did statistical analysis and no one else could. I had some skills and some softwares that no one else had, or no one else that had were willing to give of their talent to help other people. So that's how I'd respond to that. God's will.
Thank you. So,
Yes, thank
Gus, can you ask a question?
All right, thank you. I've heard about job hopping several times, and I really don't understand what actually it is, but I know it's a bad thing. And I heard you say at a point in time you didn't want to job hop. What exactly were you doing that made you feel you were job hopping, so that I can be able to understand that today? Maybe that's one thing that is stopping me from getting a job.
So job hopping would be having a lot of jobs in a short period of time. That is not a bad thing in some industries. It's very normal in some industries, in healthcare, in nursing, in some computer skills, and software engineering and coding, and those things. So if you're in an industry or in a job where that you see that that's fairly normal, by looking at the career paths of others and looking at LinkedIn, I wouldn't worry too much about that. Within management and within the industry I was in, they really value loyalty, and they value how long you stay at jobs. And so I really felt if I left after 6 months, it would look really bad on my resume. So I wanted to stay I put the market 2 years, and that's how long I ended up staying, because the recruiter found me and called me a unicorn. So good question. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. We have passed our time, but we really appreciate everyone for coming and joining us, especially our guest, Daily, for showing and presenting to us today, sharing about his career experience, and to also help us to learn and improve ourselves. I think Dale will send out his email address on the chat. So if you want to reach out to him, please, you could reach out to him. And also on LinkedIn, on Scale Foundation LinkedIn, you could also see his LinkedIn under there. So you could connect with him there as well. So part of our motto here is to please let's turn off our camera and give ourselves a hug for this webinar. Let's turn off our camera and give ourselves a hug. I think, okay, everyone is here. So let's give ourselves a hug. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. And the recording will be available to us and will be sent out for those who could not be able to make it up today. So thank you, everyone. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dale. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks.